meter at Horseshoe Lake?
Actually, we got an email today requesting that, and I sent it over to Mr. Groves. We've not had any type of smells, rarely, I should say, at Horseshoe Lake.
I'm on the board of the soccer board there, so I take care of the
Actually, I
fields and
responded
stuff.
to an email from the president of the soccer board today saying that we would be looking into it.
Yeah, because we had a meeting with concerned parents that with the season opening up, it's pretty much the games are starting next week. And there was going to be some concerns about the levels, because it's not, to my understanding, it's not what you smell, it's what you don't.
Well, if you
That's harmful.
Go online, look at all the information we have at the standards. You
Okay.
smell it. It depends on your olfactories, but you can smell it as little as 10 parts per billion. Then when it gets really high, or it gets much higher, that's when you lose your olfactory and you don't smell it. That's extremely dangerous. Okay.
All right, so there is
There's a data
push
sheet.
ahead to go for a meter over that.
Well, we're looking into it because we have not had issues or smells at Horseshoe Lake in the past. And this was last year. We ran all of our programs. We ran all of last year. So we're looking into the request.
Okay. Well, no, just with everything opening up, but I think there's more concern about it being.
Well, you got to remember. What you got to remember last year was there was no, whether you like the treatment or not, whether you can argue whether it's working, there was no treatment last year. We were hitting 800, 900 parts per billion on a fairly regular basis, and we still at Horseshoe Lake we're getting few to no complaints about the odor.
Okay. Like I said, I'm on the board. I heard the concerns. I figured I'd ask.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Yes.
Melissa Datcherson, 6 Justine Place. I just had a question now because I read the letter that was mailed out on October 29th about the petition and a response back on December 2nd. It's definitely not what I was referring to, and I just want to be clear. I was talking about a health survey, asking people how they feel physically as well as mentally, because there's a lot of anxiety that goes along with this. It's a social and emotional well-being for residents as well. Then in the letter, and I guess you guys know more about this than I would, it looks like the evaluations, they're based on the available environmental sampling data typically collected by the state or federal regulatory agencies. So do we not have that sampling data that they need to answer this petition, request for petition? I don't understand.
No, actually, we've sent them data, and one of the things that they request in a follow-up was access to our monitoring system. And they have that. We provided them access. It's on our website, so they can look at it. So that was Mrs. Newworth. So they have it. That was some of the data they were seeking. We just, quite frankly, we need to continue to push them to come up here, and we're going to continue to look at a more ground-proofing survey that I think you're looking at.
Okay, because 4 months has gone by, and so they haven't completed the review then based on what is on our website.
No, and I can tell you in experiences from other communities that they've waited longer than 4 months to get these people involved.
And then Bob, this question.
And that was before, I'm sorry, that was before recent staffing cuts.
Okay. And Bob, this question is for you.
Yeah,
I just want to see if you can clarify. You said you were interested in speaking to other towns about the issue, like Jefferson, about what's going on in Fenimore. Is that what you meant, or?
Yeah, we know that the DEP has mounted a campaign to go to local communities surrounding Roxbury to argue that it's safer to cap it than it is to take out the materials. So they're talking to them about trucking and how. Also, they're also telling them, and keep in mind this was an informal conversation. They talked at least to the mayor of Jefferson about what the smell would be like if we started opening up the landfill and how it would drift into their communities. And frankly, it sounded like a little bit of fear mongering to me. So I think it would be helpful if, and we're going to do this. It would be helpful if our perspective, the Roxbury Township official, and the mayor of Jefferson was very interested in hearing what our perspective was. What our perspective is on how the DEP has conducted itself and what our thinking is right now.
Okay, so the DEP is going to the different surrounding areas.
They certainly
Okay.
are.
Okay.
Yeah, I can tell you, I've seen the map that they're giving out, and essentially what they're doing is telling the surrounding municipalities that if this landfill were to be opened up and trucked out, that it would impact upwards of 30 municipalities and 3 counties.
Okay.
Yeah. Why would they do something like that?
Well, you know what's interesting?
Why would they do something like that?
Well, I'll put it this way. Why didn't they present that at their public hearing?
That's exactly my thinking.
I
Mr.
mean, what the hell? I mean, excuse me, why didn't they produce that?
If they had spent as much time going town to town with us, we probably wouldn't even be having this conversation.
you're probably right.
Exactly right.
And just one last question, because Anthony, I know you had mentioned, this is probably going back 3 months ago, that the whole experts report was we wanted these core samples. So this is just a curiosity question on my part. Why did we go and try and get the core samples, back then, a while ago?
Because they weren't digging it. I mean, they had.
Okay, you have to,
This was an opportunity,
Yeah.
my perspective and from Jacob Grouser's perspective, this was an opportunity for us to get those core samples without interfering with their remediation.
In fact, when I learned that they were doing the core samples on March 24th, I sent an email to Bob Zelli, CC Tony on it, saying you need to be on the site to take those samples. Obviously, they didn't do them on the 24th, and by the time we got on the site, they said, we're not going to permit you to take the samples. And that's when we went in for the injunction.
okay, thank you,
Order to show them.
thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Yes, Bill.
Joe Morocco, Lazarus Drive, Ledgewood. This is interesting what you just mentioned about these meetings. Are these public meetings or meetings with in private with township officials that the DEP is having with all these neighboring communities?
They're private.
Yeah.
With the officials in the town, was led to believe by Jefferson.
That's what I was told.
They've reached out to the mayors and the administrators, if the towns have one, or managers, if the town have a manager, and they've asked for an hour to sit down with each of them and present this information. And that's essentially what they've done. One mayor called me directly, and after the meeting provided me with the map, showed me what was going on. So,
Does anyone here have a schedule of these meetings that they could share?
I don't have
I'm not,
In your opinion, is that a public document that could be opened
from the other municipalities?
from the DEP?
Yeah, I would say it would be. Sure.
Okay.
And I think it's probably a public record once the DEP turns it over to the municipality. So if they gave them any, if they gave them a packet of information, you could request that as well, from the town that they went to.
What happens if it's just a verbal conversation that they had around the table?
Well, then there's nothing you
You
can
can
do
do
about it.
that, and you can offer up.
But I can tell you that I've seen the map.
Yeah, but notwithstanding all of that,
Where did you see the map? I'm sorry.
Chris is going to reach out to the officials that contact us, or to whom we are aware of, so.
Well, my office gets a copy of the map, and I understand that we will be getting one. And if it's public information, we'll
It
get it
is
out.
public information, and
We'll get it
I
out.
got one from one of the mayors that they called.
Mr.
And,
Bucco,
I also got one from our expert who got his hands on one.
Mr. Bucco, what is on this map?
It's a map that depicts, the topography in the area, and it shows the impacted areas.
We'll get a copy, I'll get that out.
We've got to see it.
See, you get information when I get information. I am floored by this. I am absolutely
This just
floored
started-
by, this is a
this just started
publicity
last week.
attack,
Right.
and it is just absolutely inconceivable that they would start circling a wagon on this thing. Do we know where they've gone so far? Anybody know?
I know they've
you
gone-
mentioned Bob Jefferson. Where else have they gone?
I know they've gone to, Mine Hill, and I know that they've gone to the county, and that they've gone to, let me finish, Tony, I know one, but just let me get my thoughts first, not all of them.
Okay. So they've gone to Wharton, Mine Hill, Jefferson, and Mount Olive already.
And I don't think the county met with them.
They did.
I don't think the county met with them.
No.
The county did.
The county turned them down.
The county,
Believe the county turned them down.
which county?
County,
I'm sorry,
Morris
Morris.
County, Morris County.
Morris County.
Who in Morris County? Freeholders you're talking
Freeholders.
about? Okay. And has any of these towns contacted Roxbury expressing concern? That-
Yeah, actually, they did, and I think Mayor Morris contacted me. I spoke with him, it was maybe Friday afternoon.
Oh, I believe it.
And he said, I don't know if he had met with him at that time, but he said that he was trying to call me.
I'd be interested to know if they have a presentation that they're giving these towns with,
Like I said, Bill, we're trying to secure the information, and when we do, if it's public information, we'll put it on the website, and anybody can take a look at
But
it.
that's why we brought this to your attention. We found out.
no, we appreciate it. It just, that seems preposterous that they would do something like that.
Well, I suspect it's in direct reaction to or opposition to their closure plan.
Well, you haven't really publicly expressed your
Certainly we
opposition.
have, Bill. Absolutely we have. And certainly the DEP has reacted to it by going town to town to try to promote their closure plan. So they seem to think that it's clear we're opposed.
They were very quick to finish off those wells that were gonna take 2 or 3 weeks.
Well, those are the wells the township wanted too. Right.
Well, our expert, as Mr. Bucco said, did say that they would relieve that, and in fact, I think that with what we have in place right now, those wells, if you're worried about what's gonna happen at Horseshoe Lake, and impacting all of our fields in town, and the little kids potentially being impacted by H2S, they say it's going to extract more H2S and reduce the potential for that. I think everybody wants the potential for H2S to be resolved.
Yes.
Okay.
Agree. I just want to make a comment, because I know we're talking about having a lot of scientific evidence, and I know we've been through this before, and I'll make it quick, but whatever is decided, and I don't know what's in this expert report, but this goes a lot beyond science. We also have to think of practicality. I'm familiar with the firm that you're using, and the engineer that you're using is very well respected. I know what he accomplished at the Warren County landfill, and that's great. This isn't an operating landfill. I think we all know that. We're not generating any revenue. We hope that the site is never reopened. It's a little bit different circumstance. It's very close to residential homes. And from what I've seen over the past few weeks, I've been very disappointed with every time I email the DEP, I get little bits and pieces of information they probably don't realize they're giving me. But we've had 2 mechanical failures of the scrubber in a week. And they won't tell me what happened yesterday, except it was a mechanical failure. Last week, they claim it was a pH probe. And you all know I'm an engineer. I design chemical plants. I design H2S strippers. It's what I do. I've been doing it for 20 years. A pH probe is the most unreliable piece of industrial equipment. Even the most bare bones plant in Newark that's ready to fall apart uses triple redundant pH probes. It's just, that's what's done in the industry. To hear that a pH probe failed and they had to shut this whole thing down, to me is disturbing. When you install any type of process equipment, any company, you do what's called a HAZOP, hazardous operation analysis. You're probably familiar with that. And you do what's called a what-if matrix, and you ask, what if this fails? What if this fails? You're trying to protect the environment, you're trying to protect your production investment, you're trying to protect workers and people. And what you do is for each one of these items, you specify a likelihood of failure, one every year, every 40 years, every 50 years, never. And then you have basically a severity, what would happen? Sick, someone gets sick, death, environmental spill. You do a risk matrix, and what comes out of that basically dictates the safety and redundancy requirements in the system. I haven't seen any of that in this system, down to the metal that this stuff is made out of that's rusting. I don't think they use the right metal. I think they use the stainless steel that's not. You need a higher alloy steel for this stuff. It is very corrosive.
There's a type of stainless steel that you can use.
you can use. I don't think that's what they use.
I'm aware of that.
And, you know, down to the instrumentation they have, down to what they told me today, where now they have a man that's on the site 24/7, they're gonna automate this, which sounds great. But now when it breaks, what's the response time? It's gonna take a day for someone to get here, an hour, 3 hours. They said they're gonna remove the SO2 monitors. So now you have, you know, Bruce Groves looking into maybe setting up standards for SO2 monitors that unless the township purchases or takes ownership of, those are going away.
That was in the email that you received today?
That was an email. They're gonna put a monitor in the scrubber that's not
Yeah.
accessible to the public,
Right.
no transparency, and they claim if, you know, the levels get high, they'll shut it
Did it
down.
say they were gonna remove the SO2 monitor?
It did, yeah.
They're gonna, I did know they were putting in a probe that's supposed to automatically shut the system down. Now, quite frankly, we were told that that was already, we were under the impression, or some of us were under the impression, that was already in place. So there's a lot, you bring up a lot of good
Yeah.
questions about their operation.
Well, they have someone there operating it, and they're claiming they want to automate it.
Did they say they were gonna take somebody off the site? You said that they were gonna remove somebody.
It didn't explicitly state that, but it indicated, and you could read it tonight or tomorrow,
I'll have to follow up.
it indicated that it would negate the requirement for personnel on site.
Well, we need to address it.
I read that, Bill, I read that too.
Is that the impression
I
you
think
got?
that's exactly,
Certainly
what
the
you're saying
impression I
is
got.
exactly correct.
And that's fine. If you have
No.
a provision for, if this goes down, you have a spare and it automatically switches over. But well, I guess what I'm saying is
I
that,
don't know what it is.
you know, from what I've seen, the DEP is doing things on the cheap. And they're not doing things the way that I would expect them to be, you know, being an engineer and designing process equipment, knowing I'm protecting an entire community. And what I'm saying is, even if the science says that what they're doing is working, I hope that your expert is knowledgeable enough in plant design and operations of this equipment to know the redundancy of instrumentation required. And if this is what we're going to have to live with, that we don't have to have these mechanical failures, because this is going to be a lifetime of hell for us if this is what we have to live with.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying that, you know, even if the science works, there's a lot of other aspects, from the money, the ownership, the future of the site, down to how is this equipment going to be designed to minimize or eliminate downtime. And I think that those issues need to be considered when you make your decision. When a township actually takes all the facts and says, this is what I think is best for the town and best for the people. And that's all I'm asking you to do. And I'm willing to help any way I can to point out any of this stuff. But again, I don't have all the facts, but every time I send them something, they send me a little back, and I'm starting to piece two and two together. And what they're doing is just doesn't make sense. I mean, you wouldn't design equipment like this. No one would buy it.
I think they alluded to, Bill, during their presentation that, you know, they were going to remove that device and put something else in. But if you remember correctly, I don't think they told us what that thing was that they were going to replace it with, and whether or not it was going to be redundant or not, which is another problem I have with that presentation.
That's the automatic system, I think.
No, what they're going to replace it with, I'm very familiar with it. Basically, right now, they have the oxidizer, they're burning the H2S, and everything else. That goes to the scrubber that's essentially knocking out all the contaminants that are left. And I believe that's how the Warren County landfill started out. I've always had objections to that, because the H2S is really the most corrosive piece. So you really don't want to have that go into your oxidizer. You want to get rid of the H2S first. And that's what the Warren County landfill does now, and that's what they said would be this longer-term solution. And what they would say is, once the levels decrease to a certain number, and I know the reason why they say this, because these systems are expensive based on capacity. They're real expensive. The beauty of them is it doesn't require a lot of operational cost. It's a high capital cost, but there's not a lot of operational cost. So right now we have natural gas, you have all this water, you got to truck out all the waste. That's a lot of operational cost. This iron sponge technology, you pay up front for it, but then the only maintenance is that you have to replace the media every year or couple years.
Depending on how much.
Depending on how much you have, and the only daily or weekly maintenance is that it actually, instead of generating this slurry mess of limestone and calcium sulfate, it actually generates sulfur powder. And the sulfur needs to be removed, so you got to truck that out, and that's dependent on how much gas. So what they're saying is that the smokestacks will run until until the emissions reduce to a level that they deem appropriate. And I mean, hopefully, if they follow through with what they say, who knows what budgets are like then, they will replace those smokestacks with this iron sponge technology, where the gas is basically put over a catalyst bed and it's converted to elemental sulfur. What comes off is very clean. You'll still have a scrubber, but you won't have all these corrosive gases. And that's what they meant by longer term. And I think they said they didn't know when that would be. It'd be somewhere between 2 and 7 years, but they weren't sure. So to me, that probably means 4 to 14, but I don't know.
Thank you.
So,
Good points.
so for what it's worth, I just hope that those, those points are considered. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Anyone else? Yes.
Hi, just a quick note. It seems like you guys are pretty upset about the DEP going around and, as you said, circling the wagons. And I'm assuming there's unhappiness about the core samples tomorrow. Governor Christie's going to be in Fairfield doing a town hall meeting. And I ask each of you to try to attend and try to ask a question, even if it's not in your official capacity as residents of this town. Attend, raise your hand, try to ask him, what's going on here? Why can't we get core samples? Why can't we, why is the DEP going and basically making this town to look like, a leech to Morris County and to New Jersey when it's not our fault, and why should we have to suffer? So I really hope that at least one of you considers trying going. I know you all have jobs, but so do we, so thanks.
We're still going to do our best, trust me. Thank you. There's no one else, close the public portion. And we have an executive session tonight, Mr. Guido.
Yes.
Would everyone like to take a 5-minute break?
We have